5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're live. Anthony Cummings, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for inviting us in today.
No, it's great to have you in. So let's start from, I suppose, the company background. Tell us about your background and the company background for Honeypot. It's very interesting things you're doing. So if you give us a good summary.
Yes, with pleasure. I'll do my background extremely fast.
Yeah.
So I trained in Glasgow as an accountant, and I was helping on a pro bono basis as a trustee for a children's charity, and I loved that. I loved that aspect. So when I married a London girl and moved here, I got a job with a charity which was supposedly for 6 months. Well, I looked around for a job with an accountancy firm. That was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm happily ensconced in the charity sector. And over all those years, there hasn't been a single charity that's reached me personally more than the Honeypot Children's Charity. So I'm privileged to be the Director of Income and Communications there. Honeypot has a very interesting history. It started as a very small charity in Hampshire with a house there. And it was a house for disadvantaged children to give them a joy and appreciation of the countryside. Through that experience, young carers found us. So we started off caring for disadvantaged children. We found within that cohort there was a number of children that were also caring for a sick adult, a parent, and sometimes we're caring for a sibling as well, or even both. And those children were of the highest need. And we realised at Honeypot that this is a need that we needed to specialise in and meet. Roll forward 22 years and the whole issue of young carers has come to the fore. There's been very substantial investment by government in establishing the level of caring by children. Basically, we care for children aged 5 to 12 who are looking after a sick relative. And government spent a lot of time establishing the level of caring, and coupled with an organisation called Nottingham University, which was commissioned by the BBC, who did a large scale study. They found an astounding figure that in England and Wales there are 800,000 children looking after a sick adult or sibling.
That's incredible.
An astounding figure.
That was research done by... Was that by BBC you said?
It was commissioned by the BBC and done by Nottingham University. They've very much specialised in social research in this area. And it was of interest to Honeypot because we were 22 years ahead of the curve. Yeah. Because 22 years ago we were already caring for young carers. So over that time we grew our services, and we can now be thought of as the National Young Carers Organisation. It might be worth, if I can, please, Andrew, just to explain what a young carer is, because I'm using that term a lot.
I was just going to go into it to a perspective side, if we can deep dive into maybe an individual carer and maybe what their day-to-day life looks like, and just to go for a bit of a deep dive.
Yes, absolutely. So a young carer is a child who's looking on a voluntary basis after a sick parent, a mother or a father, or a sibling, or both. And those children are doing a whole range of jobs that government policy and government guidelines say they should not be doing. Because a child of that age should not be doing heavy lifting, they should not be doing shopping, they should not be dealing with finances, they shouldn't be looking after the personal care needs of a sick relative. And there's a whole range of other defined roles that children should not be doing, and that's precisely what these children are doing. And that's the shocking thing, that we have children as young as 5 caring for an adult, and many of these young carers care for 30 hours a week or more. So it gives you an idea of what we're talking about. And many of these children come from very disadvantaged backgrounds. So it's layer upon layer of challenge, and they need support. And if I just can very briefly explain why they need support, it puts the whole thing into perspective.
For sure.
Thank you, Andrew. So caring for a child, supporting a child that's providing caring helps to relieve the stress and anxiety that they feel. You know, as an adult, one can appreciate looking after a sick elderly parent, the stress and anxiety. Imagine what that's like for a child who's in the development stage of their life. Causes great stress and anxiety. These children are really the heroes of our society. That's what they are. They basically sacrifice their childhood to look after a loved one. But they don't see it that way. When you talk to young carers, they never see that they're doing anything that different, that special.
They don't know anything different.
That's right.
Yeah.
They think that's what
Which is very sad.
Doing. Absolutely, Andrew. It's very, very sad. So what Honeypot does is we try to give them back their childhood. We do give them back their childhood. We relieve their stress, their anxiety. We give them these happy childhood memories, which, you know, we're all blessed with. You know, they make us the people we are. We build our whole personality and life on these happy childhood memories. Those kids are deprived of that, and we come in and we give them that. We give them that through offering respite breaks in the most beautiful homes in Hampshire, in the New Forest, and in Pennybryn, which is in Powys, Mid Wales. And these are mostly they're inner city kids that don't really have a chance to experience the pleasures of the countryside and to sleep under clean sheets and have hot meals served to them. And here the children experience childhood. They have great fun. Both our homes are set in 7 acres of beautiful countryside, and they do such things as tree spotting, learning about pond life, building dens out in the forest, playing on the zip wire, being out in the fresh air, just having fun.
So good for their mental health as well, just that fresh air side. I know you said before we started the podcast that a lot of your kids that sign up it's very urbanised. That's right. All from inner cities, a lot of them, isn't it? That's right. Just talking more about that and the sacrifices and I suppose the situations. Firstly, are a lot of these kids coming from backgrounds where alcoholism, drug abuse, is that the main percentage of kids? Yes. So there's been quite extensive research, and one of the main issues for a lot of young carers is they're dealing with mental illness in an adult. And very sadly, the single largest predictor of the next generation experiencing mental health is that it's in the family. And that's a cycle that we try to support and try to reverse. So these young carers don't in turn develop deep-rooted long-term health problems, but they have the childhood, they build their confidence, their self-esteem, lower their anxiety, and develop as happy, productive, well-adjusted children. For sure. And just, I know there's a big correlation between young carers and I suppose grades at school. They can be quite affected, and there is research done that they get quite lower grades due to the sacrifice they're making in their personal lives. Do Honeypot help out with that kind of stuff as well? I know they can't obviously change the education system, but I suppose the mental health and being out in nature is the school education something you implement in those sites you have for respite?
Yeah, well, Andrew, I can see you've done your research because you're spot on. You've hit the target. There's been extensive corroborated research to show that young carers score 7 GCSE grades lower than the national average. That's quite devastating, really. Yeah. And underpinning that is that the children don't have that stability at home where they can concentrate on their studies. And it's not the academic, it's not the development of their brains as such, but it's supporting their social and emotional development, because if you get that right, all the studies show everything else follows. You know, a child that's confident, that's happy, that feels secure, can progress naturally and normally. And that's what these children lack. They lack confidence and self-esteem, and we provide a whole range of programs called social and emotional active learning that boosts that develops their self-esteem, their self-worth, and that stability from which comes a springboard to succeed in education. And that's something we're immensely excited about. It's a program that we started a year ago. It was helped, really, we got it off the ground with the help of an individual sponsor, Bank of America.
Yeah.
They really saw the value of this. Bank of America are great supporters of children. They've supported a number of very worthy causes, and we just resonated with them, and they came on board. So
it's a big brand to be collaborating with.
It really is, and they bring all sorts of skills, and not just providing the finances. Of course, we're looking beyond that 2-year partnership, how we keep it going, because this is a long-term program. Just as we have been providing services for 22 years, we want to provide these social and emotional active learning programs for the next 22 years, and that's our challenge. And, as the Director of Communications, it's my job to raise the level of awareness and understanding of the life of a young carer. And the best way to do that is really to give you a couple of examples, if I may.
Yeah, work away, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's all yours.
Thank you, Andrew. So I'm thinking of, and I would preface this by saying every single young carer has a different story. And it's helpful to try to get a grip of that, just to understand a couple of the stories, but also keep in mind that they're all different. They all have personal challenges, different challenges in their lives. So I'm thinking of a lovely, happy young girl called Jessica Barr, who looks after her mother, Angelica, who's 36 years old. Angelica suffers from blackouts, very, very severe blackouts. She can have up to 20 in a day, and some of these are minor and 20. Some of these are major. She can go into fitting. They can be life-threatening. So, I started off by explaining to you that young carers do housework, heavy lifting. Others do things far more traumatic than that. What Jessica does is life-saving. When Angelica has a fit, it's essential that she's administered medication, and she's made safe, that she doesn't choke, she doesn't bite. And she's had life-threatening fits. And Jessica has sourced the help. She's got the professional medical service involved. She's been taught to seek help from an adult because she's just a child. And this is amazing because it's counterintuitive. We teach our children not to speak to strangers, to be very guarded. She's been taught to how to speak to strangers. If her mother has a life-threatening fit, Jessica really has to stop an adult, explain what's going on, assess herself whether that adult's safe to talk to, and save her life, basically.
That's
amazing.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And as we're dealing with children between 5 and 12, and just saying probably one half of that age group probably isn't digital capable maybe yet to signing up for your services. So how do you get kids actually to sign up who are maybe on the younger part of the scale?
Yes. Okay, so we have a number of ways of reaching out. The first step we have is that Honeypot has built up over 22 years a whole network of referring organisations. So we don't actually go out and find the children. We're part of the whole children's service sector, and we are referred children who are young carers in need of our services by local care organisations, by social workers, by general practitioners, by school welfare officers, and a range of other children's services. So that gives us that ability. But that's good and fine. That helps us to reach 3,500 children each year. But we know there's 800,000 there, and we're ambitious to reach more and more and more. And there's some very hard to reach children. So we've been thinking long and hard and doing our scoping of services. And we know that the way that young kids like to communicate now is digitally through social media. We're developing a whole outreach service to reach those children. And through that outreach service, it's like any social media. If it becomes popular, they find us. If it seems something that offers them good engagement.
For sure.
And that's how we're working to reach far more children, to offer them our mainstream services and also to be connected with them through our counsellors online.
And tell me, I know government funding for kids services has declined probably over the last 10 years, especially the first half of the century. What has it been like lately?
So Honeypot has never ever attracted government funding, which is regrettable.
It's disappointing.
But we depend on voluntary contributions. We believe as the level of awareness and engagement with young carers grows, it will become a government issue, and government funding will follow. And at our own level, we're trying our best to keep on raising that profile. That's why we're so grateful to come in today, to speak to you and to reach out to more people, to help them appreciate that this is something, that many voices need to be calling for, not just us, that these children are basically underpinning our whole care service. Those children are keeping families together. You think of families keeping children together. It's the other way around here. These children are keeping the families together. And if these families dissolve, the human cost is unbearable, and the financial cost to society is monumental.
Exactly.
A family that breaks up leads to all sorts of needs, social care needs, rehousing, special education, invariably leads to medical needs, all sorts of things.
The mental health costs.
Health crisis absolutely underpins that.
It brings down the whole economy if it isn't, I suppose, if the awareness isn't constantly being marketed and looked after. So it's so many other external benefits that one mightn't even think of.
Yes.
That's the thing about it. And the charity part of the sector you're in, is there much competition there as well? I know, would you call it competition? I suppose charity, I'm not the most familiar with how competition, or is that the right word for the charity sector?
No, it's a word that's appropriate. It is. You think that in the not-for-profit sector you wouldn't have competition, but the competition really is for scarce resources. There's so many worthy causes out there, and we're all fighting for the charitable giving of the members of our society. So there's competition in that respect. However, there's a much higher level of enlightenment in the charitable sector, now more than ever, that there's a need for charities to work together, to achieve economies, to deliver better services, to ensure that there's no repetition of resources. And Honeypot's embraced that model. We always look to work with partners and to make our services more impactful and more meaningful by tapping into the expertise of other charities, and similarly they do the same with us, and that's very positive, and that's something I'm sure your listeners would support.
Definitely.
And I'm sure it's something most all reasonable people would wish to see.
Exactly. And I'm just saying, for example, for people in the private and profit industry, like even the word partnership is very important, because I think the economy in general is kind of going towards a partnership type, rather than, from what I'm in, is agency client, where you just have a retainer and you're paid a certain amount at the end of the month. I think that industry is changing to more partnerships, working together, and you're not tied in like a mobile contract anymore. You're actually working together. What can I do externally for my client, and what can my client do for me as well, whether that's organising collaborations with future audiences or future customers or charities that might be beneficial for my industry. Just saying, I suppose I'm in the digital world, like cyberbullying charities, and connect people. So I think the world in general probably in the next few years are going to go towards that collaborative and partnership, because like Richard Florida is probably my favourite researcher in America, and he does a lot of work around companies and collaborations. And the benefit for the economy and for the company itself just by collaborating with people in the same competitive space. The profits, or not the profits, probably not the right word, but just the growth them companies see because of that, it's just huge. And they're just not, like, no man is an island, I suppose.
Yes.
So I just think that partnerships that charities are doing can really be transferred into many other different parts of the market.
How true. Absolutely. It's very much our thinking, and it's the thinking of many in the sector. I mean, we have a number of partnerships we're very, very proud of, and we've all benefited from. We have a partnership with a specialist educational charity called ASDAN, and they provide the educational input for our SEAL programs, social and emotional active learning programs. We obviously are the ones that have the expertise to deliver it, and we have the target audience, the children to deliver it to. We have the resources, the beautiful homes and the network. So we use all those resources we have to combine with the resources and educational expertise and resources ASDAN have to benefit children, and that's what we're both about. We're both about benefiting children, so it makes perfect sense we pool resources. We have another partnership with an organisation called Chicks. They offer a similar service, but not the same service. And they go with children older than us. So we work to create a cohort of 12-year-olds, 11, 12-year-olds who are facing a very challenging time in their life. It's called transition. They're transitioning from primary to secondary school, and that can be an anxious time for any child. But imagine a child that's looking after, a parent with multiple sclerosis who needs 30 hours of care. They're absolutely terrified. How are they going to cope with the higher challenges of higher education and still care? So what we do is we prepare them. We prepare them as 11 and 12-year-olds for that transition, to have the resources, the skills to cope with it. And then our partners, Chicks, take them along the journey in the next year of that transition. And that's a partnership that neither of the two organisations could deliver without the other. And that's another example of the thinking that's spreading like wildfire. And it's encouraged by donors, it's encouraged by social commentators, it's encouraged by strategists, by social planners. And we're with that. We're all with it. It's the way that society develops, by cooperation, by mutual working.
Anthony, thanks a lot for coming in. And
Andrew, thank you for inviting us. It's very grateful.
You're doing wonderful work, and I wish the best of luck for Honeypot. And I think you'll be hearing from me fairly soon, because it's such warming work you're doing. So I can't thank you enough, and thanks again for coming in. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you very much.